Okay, so let's continue with chapter 1, shall we? So, as I mentioned about Uhud, this is where Spencer shows his first manipulation of information. Again, he cites this book, and he basically mentions on page 14 the Battle of Uhud. And he mentions Hamza's body. Now, Hamza was the uncle of Muhammad. And in this account, Spencer mentions that Muhammad comes upon the mutilated corpse of his uncle Hamza. And he exclaims, quote, "By God, if God..." I'm sorry. Let's see here. Basically, he says... By God, if God gives us victory over them in the future, we will mutilate them as no Arab has ever been mutilated, has anyone. And so this is after the response that Muhammad almost says something very similar. He says that if I find out who did this, essentially, I'm going to mutilate their bodies. Now, that's where Spencer stops. And, you know, I can't blame anybody who's actually a layman reading this book, Spencer's book. I can't blame them for taking his word for that, okay? Like I mentioned on video 1, or, yeah. But, see, here's the thing, I own this book, so I thought to myself, wow, that is really, you know, intense, you know. Of course, I also thought in a more of a humane fashion, I thought to myself, you know, if you yourself came upon the mutilated corpse of your favorite uncle that you loved, hell, any family member, and you knew who did it, are you just going to stare at this corpse and go, oh, that's okay. I'm cool. It's alright. No, it's alright. No, you're going to be very upset. So emotionally, Muhammad says this. And am I justifying this? No. I'm actually continuing with this book that Spencer uses. Continuing the sentence after this quote, it mentions that God sends down the following words to Muhammad at this point. Quote, if you punish, then punish as you have been punished. If you endure patiently, that is better for the patient. Endure thou patiently. Thy endurance is only in God. Grieve not for them, and be not in distress at what they plot. End quote. Then it says, so the apostle pardoned them, and was patient, and forbade mutilation. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. He forbade mutilation. Now, does Spencer mention that in his book? No. He stops with Muhammad and his followers repeating what Muhammad essentially said, that if they catch whoever did this to Hamza, they will mutilate their corpses. He doesn't mention the rest of the story. Okay? And am I taking this out of context? No. I encourage everybody to get a copy of this book, Life of Muhammad, page 387 to page 388, right after where Spencer quotes. You see why I'm a little frustrated? That someone... This is the shame from someone like myself who studies theology. This is where, you know, and loves history, really. This is where I get a little irritated. When people are intentionally twisting facts. Now, that's the Battle of Uhud. That's how he sums it up. Now, then he has, throughout the whole book, this Muhammad versus Jesus. Notice the language, versus Jesus, on page 12. And he quotes Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, which is, of course, very peaceful, and rightfully so. And then he quotes the Quran, chapter 8, verse 60, where it mentions that the Muslims, you know, in the context to, you know, should get an army ready, etc. But he neglects to mention verse 61. And again, this is what I'm talking about. Taking stuff out of context, this stuff just sort of cracks me up. He mentions verse 60, and verse 61 says, but if the enemy inclines towards peace, do thou also incline towards peace, and trust in Allah, for he is the one that heareth and knoweth all things. Does he mention that whole peace that's actually in the Quran? No, of course he doesn't. Then, on page 15, Spencer mentions Muhammad and the Hajj being a pagan rite that he wanted to incorporate into Islam. Now, in Islamic theology, it's the understanding that Abraham and Ishmael actually started the rotation, started the circulating around the Kaaba, and the Hajj practice is actually, in Islamic theology, is actually the whole Hajj process is based off of the event that led up from Hagar and Ishmael coming to Mecca, or the area of the Kaaba, and then Abraham, etc., as I'm sure Muslims and anybody who has any iota of information on Islamic theology knows. So to say that this is just a pagan rite, I mean, yes, the pagans practiced part of this rite, they did indeed. However, for Spencer to show a lack of Islamic theology and say that Muhammad just wanted to incorporate this into the religion of Islam, again, is showing his, not his, his lack of understanding of Islamic theology. Then on page 16 to 17, he mentions the Treaty of Hadiyah Lira, and again I'm butchering that, the peace treaty between the Meccans and Muhammad. In 628, Spencer tells us the story rather well here. Part of the agreement of any side, of each side, the Meccans and the Muslims, was that if anyone came, so if a Muslim went to the Meccans, or a Meccans went to a pagan went to the Muslims, they were to send that person back to their respective sides. And then he says, according to Spencer, that in chapter 60, verse 10, where God tells Muhammad not to actually allow believing Meccans or Quraysh who come to Muhammad, God says don't send them back. So basically, Spencer equates this with Muhammad breaching the agreement, which actually this whole Muhammad refusing to allow newly converted Muslims, doesn't force them back to Mecca. He says this actually breaches the contract. But if you read again the life of Muhammad, page 509, we read something very interesting here. Again, the episode that he quotes is accurate here. This woman, her son said, please, Muhammad, send our mother back to the Quraysh so we don't, because that's the agreement. However, if you actually look at what is being, if you look at the entire context of the whole verse, God reveals this to Muhammad, and then it says that Abu Saifin married her afterwards while they were both polytheists in Mecca, and Kulthum, etc., married polytheists who came from Mecca and went to Medina. However, what is lacking? This is page 509 to 510. What is lacking anywhere in this account, in this biography of Muhammad? What's lacking is that this is the direct result of the breaching of the armistice or the agreement between Mecca and Medina. So Spencer is interpolating this fact by using what is actually factual within these pages. And so I don't understand why he's doing this. He's once again manipulating information. This biography does not say that this was the direct result of why the agreement was breached. So once again, he's manipulating things. Now, to end this video, to end the analyzing of chapter 1, Spencer does not mention the following. He does not mention Muhammad's peaceful taking of Mecca. He does not mention the fact that Muhammad forbade the killing of any of the polytheists in Mecca. Instead, he ends chapter 1 with this idea that Muhammad broke the treaty, and that, I guess if you could infer the point he's trying to get across, that, I guess, war, essentially. He does not mention, however, Muhammad's death, nothing at all. He does not even mention the idea of the peaceful taking of Mecca at all. So again, this is a disservice to the biography of Muhammad. So as a historian, I dislike that. This is a disservice to the Islamic theology, which I don't like that as a theologian. So frankly, this really bugs the heck out of me. So anyway, this is the end of the analyzing of chapter 1. I will be posting in the future the analyzing of chapter 2, and really getting deeper into this book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam and the Crusades by Robert Spencer. And as Mr. Islam Answers Back, his profile and his rebuttaling of Spencer, as he said, quote, Spencer is not an Islamic scholar. So I'd like to reaffirm that. He's not, and heck, he does a bad job of doing his homework. Or is he doing a bad job? Perhaps he's actually just trying to find what he likes and, quote, cherry pick. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll do chapter 2 in the near future. Thank you, and peace.